Future major entries of Final Fantasy may not end up being on Xbox, and NFTs look like they are continuing to grow within the gaming industry and may be here to stay. Welcome back to another video, guys. If you like daily content, make sure to hit that subscribe button. So Final Fantasy has had a very weird relationship with Xbox, as we've seen a lot of the older Final Fantasy games coming over to Xbox Game Pass, and Square Enix actually released a decent amount of games on the service itself. But with the newer Final Fantasy games, I guess dating back to Final Fantasy VII Remake, which we still haven't seen on Xbox, and who knows when we're going to see it, and then the future Final Fantasy 16 game that is currently a console exclusive to PlayStation, but also releasing on PC, so we have no idea when that's going to be making its way on to Xbox, is something I think for people who only have Xbox are a little bit disappointed in. I mean, if you have a PC as well, you're still going to be able to check out these games, or you're going to have to go out and buy a PlayStation 5. But it seems like that relationship between PlayStation and Square Enix is solidifying, in the sense that these bigger future Final Fantasy games may only be coming out on PlayStation. Now, this comes via some information from Video Game Chronicles' Jordan Midler, who commented on Square Enix and future games on Reset Era, and he had this to say: most of Square's stuff will end up on Xbox, so that means like other games other than Final Fantasy, and we know that Stranger in Paradise, which is a game that's going to be coming out, it's a different type of Final Fantasy game, is going to be coming out on Xbox Series X and S and Xbox One. It isn't like one of the mainline Final Fantasy games, and that comes out just in 2 months. So not every next release won't be coming on Xbox, but the big ones like Final Fantasy 16 is what he is referring to. Continues on here saying, but I wouldn't hold out hope for Final Fantasy unless something changes. Sony wants PlayStation to be the home of Final Fantasy this gen. Final Fantasy 7 was supposed to be on Xbox by now, but here we are. And again, we don't know when that is going to be coming out on Xbox, if it ever will. And if it does, maybe it will be an Xbox Game Pass release. It seems like PlayStation and Square Enix have a really tight relationship, I guess, going forward with the newer Final Fantasy games. There probably is a huge deal in place there, where Sony has locked those games down to release as a console exclusive on PlayStation, knowing that PlayStation's huge in Japan. Final Fantasy is a huge franchise there, and even in the West, Final Fantasy is a huge franchise, so it's very enticing to get the new iterations of the mainline Final Fantasy games exclusive to your console. And then we look at the other side of the situation. We see what's going on with Ubisoft and Ubisoft Plus coming over to Xbox. It isn't on PlayStation yet, and Xbox kind of did this thing with EA as well, with EA Play, where it came out on Xbox first and then they rolled it into Xbox Game Pass, and we may see something like that in the future. And he also comments on this saying, it's interesting to see Ubisoft side with Xbox more and more this gen, while Square is firmly in Sony's camp, even beyond what's publicly known. This is a cool move, but I wonder what price we'll be looking at for the Ultimate, so Game Pass Ultimate plus Ubisoft Plus. So you look at what's going on, and it is really turning into a very interesting kind of battle here between the two consoles. It's an extremely competitive generation so far, which is great to see, because when these companies are as competitive as they are right now, everybody wins. At the end of the day, you just kind of have to choose the stuff that you're more interested in. But at least we're seeing more and more of this stuff also releasing on PC. So it's kind of like, it doesn't really matter where you go, you'll still most likely get access to these games as long as you have access to a PC, or even with Xbox Cloud Gaming, if you have a cell phone, which I mean everybody does, you're going to still get access to a lot of the games that you would have to originally, or I guess traditionally, buy a console for back in the day when everything was a console exclusive, and that was the main way of competing. But are we going to see Final Fantasy 16 on Xbox at any point in the future? Right now, it's really hard to say because of what is happening with Final Fantasy VII Remake. I mean, we're coming up onto that 2 years, I believe in April of 2022. So maybe we'll get a special announcement that the game is making its way onto Xbox after that, or maybe it'll never come to Xbox. We don't know. But when it comes to Final Fantasy 16, there is this information here that right now it's known that Final Fantasy 16, at least from this tweet here from Piers Harding Rolls, who is a games industry analyst, is that Final Fantasy 16 is full exclusive for 6 months, and then a console exclusive for 12 months. So in 6 months, you're going to be able to play it on PC after its release, and then a year later, you may be able to see it on an Xbox console. We don't know, but it really does seem like Square Enix and Sony have a big deal where all of their new games are at least timed exclusive released on PlayStation. All right, jumping over here to NFTs. I mean, NFTs has been in the news a lot lately when it comes to video games. People don't want them. People are against it. The majority of people within video games, at least I can see. But it seems like these companies aren't listening and they're doubling down on it. And the obvious reason is it doesn't really matter about the outrage. At the end of the day, they know they're going to be making tons of money off of this because there is a crowd out there for it. And the amount of profit they're going to make highly outweighs the public PR, the negative public PR, I guess, they're getting from a certain amount of people. It just seems that way, because if it didn't, they probably would have been pulling it back a little bit. We saw Ubisoft with their Ubisoft Quartz thing that they put out, and they're still going strong on that. And then we saw Stalker 2. That was the only company that kind of went back on their NFT stuff. They took it out of the game, where they were going to release some NFT stuff, and then they decided, hey, because of all the backlash, they're not going to be able to do it. And I'm assuming it was different for them because it's a much smaller company compared to these huge ones like Konami, Square Enix, and Ubisoft, where their goal is to increase their share prices. Their goal is to increase their profit year over year. And sure, there'll be backlash, but at the end of the day, if people are spending millions and millions of dollars on this stuff, they're going to still be making more money. And it seems like we have another one here, and this is from Castlevania, which is a beloved franchise for a lot of people. And it looks like they're celebrating their 35th anniversary with NFTs, which, if you're a Castlevania fan, you've been playing this since it first came out, or even if you started playing it, for example, like on the PlayStation 1 with Symphony of the Night, an absolutely incredible game. You see this as a way to celebrate the 35th anniversary. It's probably pretty annoying, but here is what it is. They're going to be releasing these NFTs that have a bunch of different things, like background music, like digital art, and all that stuff that I guess NFTs are used for. And it's funny because Konami doesn't really make too many games anymore. Like, they barely do anything, and they have all these franchises that they're sitting on that they haven't released for developers to be able to give us new versions of these games. But now they're going down the NFT route. So there it is. I don't know what you guys think. I know there's a lot of people against it, and there's some people for it as well. I don't have really any interest at all in this stuff. I barely even have interest in like micro transactions for cosmetics. So I don't ever see myself utilizing any of this NFT stuff in the future. And then we have Square Enix, we were just talking about, who, as we know, came out on New Year's and announced that they were going to be getting big into NFTs and the blockchain. And the reason it was kind of ridiculous because they're like, some people play games to have fun and some people play games to contribute and play games to earn stuff. And it's just crazy to think about as you get older, whereas back in the day, you would buy a game and purely just for the fun and enjoyment of it, and that's what got most people into gaming. But these companies are now really looking at the different use cases of gaming, and they're trying to capitalize on that with things like NFTs to make more money. And Square Enix came out, there was again a ton of backlash, but it really means nothing, because at the end of the day, this is what they're going for. Is as after they announced that they were getting into NFTs, they saw their share price surge, and it was the biggest single day increase for Square Enix since last August, meaning their investors and the people in the company want this, they're happy about it, and we're going to continue to see more NFTs from these big companies. I wonder what the next one will be. Will it be EA? Will it be something like Halo Infinite coming out with NFTs? Nobody knows, but it seems like the majority of like core gamers out there are against it, but the business people are not. Therefore, they're going to continue to do it because they're going to be making money. And there is a subsection of people that will spend tons and tons of money on NFTs. And I'm sure it's not all negative. There are probably some positives to it. And it's interesting because when Ubisoft first dropped Ubisoft Quartz, everyone was jumping on Ubisoft. But I mean, logically, you knew that they were just trying to get out there first, and that all of these other companies were going to be coming in after, as we are seeing right now. Anyways, guys, that's it for me. Let me know what you think about this in the comments below. Are you disappointed with potentially future big Final Fantasy games not coming to Xbox? And what are your overall thoughts on NFTs? Do you really understand them? Do you not understand them? Do you think there's any positives in NFTs going forward in video games, or is it all just negative for gamers? If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that thumbs up button. You're new here, you like what you saw throughout this video, would appreciate you hitting that subscribe button. Help this channel grow, help grow this community. Thank you again for watching. Thank you for your support, and I'll catch you in the next video.